SolarPunk Future, green sponge cities can rectify climate change, environmental degradation worldwide, build the most sustainable, eco-rich, harmonious civilization. A new future is on the horizon. Humans have discovered new ways and systems to restore the planet and secure the future of every living being, including humans. The planet has been enduring mass extinctions, floods, wildfires, heatwaves, droughts, pandemics and many other catastrophes. Climate change is only one of the reasons humans have a larger impact upon the planet than ever before. Solarpunk is a literary genre and art movement that imagines how humanity might look in the future if it succeeds in conquering major present challenges like sustainability, human impact on the environment, climate change, and pollution. It's a science fiction subgenre that includes elements of utopian and fantasy literature and is related with cyberpunk derivatives. Solarpunk incorporates low-tech techniques to living sustainably, such as gardening, permaculture, positive psychology, and DIY ethics, as well as high-tech approaches to living sustainably. Its topics may reflect environmental philosophy such as brilliant green environmentalism, deep ecology, and eco-modernism, as well as punk ideology such as anarchism, anti-consumerism, anti-authoritarianism, and civil rights. A sponge city is a revolutionary urban building design for flood management, ecological infrastructure, and drainage systems that was introduced by Chinese researchers in early 2000 and endorsed by the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and the State Council as urbanism policy in 2014. It can help to ease urban flooding, water shortages, and the urban heat island effect, as well as benefit the biological environment and biodiversity by absorbing and retaining rainwater and utilizing it to lessen floods. Rainwater can be collected and used for irrigation as well as household needs. It's a form of long-term drainage system for cities and other areas. Ancient wisdom of adapting to climate issues, notably in the monsoon area, influenced the concept. Sponge city policies are a set of nature-based solutions that capture, store, and filter water using natural landscapes. Sponge cities are part of a worldwide movement that goes by various names: green infrastructure in Europe, low-impact development in the United States, water-sensitive urban design in Australia, natural infrastructure in Peru, nature-based solutions in Canada. In contrast to industrial management, in which people confine water with levees, channels, and asphalt and rush it off the land as quickly as possible, these newer approaches seek to restore water's natural tendency to linger in places like wetlands and floodplains. We can build incredible cities powered by green energy that act as giant sponges to copy what nature does, not just to prevent flooding in places that rains a lot. New green energy sponge cities in dry areas can form rainfall by humidifying the air naturally. This is what nature has been doing to prevent droughts, flooding and other catastrophic events. Now, cities can be the solution to all of these problems and mitigate climate change and its negative effects. Drought-ridden areas can be regenerated as green energy sponge city infrastructure in production. In this way, the rain will return to these areas and feed greenery, agriculture and other productions since water is required for everything. In flood-prone areas, some countries have planned to transform their entire large cities into sponges to absorb and recycle the water. If it rains a lot, in a city covered in concrete streets and buildings, rainwater has nowhere to go. Instead of seeping into the ground like in a forest or grassland, it flows, inundates drain systems, cause flooding. Concrete gutters, drainage tunnels, other concrete structure are known as gray infrastructure. They aren't efficient anymore in a world tormented by climate crises. Cities have to change to tackle climate change and disasters generated by this great event. Most regions across the world are either flooding or getting drier as a result of prolonged droughts. Heat waves are the norm in every city during warm months. The world population living in cities will double in a few decades. Cities have to be emission-free, CO2 absorbers like forests that work as a sponge in nature. We have got to work with nature in every way possible, especially industrially and for city planning. Green energy is going to power cities at an increasing rate. Countries have been pledging to go greener and subsidize clean energy infrastructure. There is a new concept that's called sponge cities. Sponge cities use a lot of green architecture principles to create great spaces designed to absorb water just like a sponge. Cities are being retrofitted with new devices and technologies providing cleaner, greener systems. Porous pavements, roads, tree planting, roofs covered in plants and soil that retain water, huge green spaces filled with interconnected waterways, channels and ponds, areas that act like wetlands to stop overflowing of rivers make up sponge cities. Wetlands were preventing overflowing of rivers before they were paved over and turned into cities. These systems passively absorb rainwater and overflow with their sponge-like structure. When this is combined with better drain systems, cities can handle about 4 times the rainwater than normal cities. Absorbed water is passively cleaned, stored away to be collected and reused by cities. Water is going to be scarcer all over the world. It has to collected, stored and reused with green infrastructure. Nature had been recycling water and all other nutrients with natural systems. These systems make up sponge cities and provide so many benefits and increase the carbon capture and sequestration of cities. Biodiversity is also boosted, with whole ecosystems flourishing within cities alongside humans and wildlife. Green energy sponge cities can reduce the heat island effect in urban areas and dense cities. Concrete cities absorb heat and make cities a lot hotter than their surroundings. Extra plants and green surfaces in cities can keep them a lot cooler. Green space, a connection to nature in cities, can improve mental health and overall well-being of people. Some countries have many sponge city projects and other green city plans to tackle climate change in cities and globally. It's proven that the places with increased vegetation and green ecosystems attract more rainfall that can be stored and reused for cities and industries. Some cities have channels called swales that let rainwater seep into the ground. Other countries have been adopting this concept of sponge cities that can be as small as an eco-village, so large cities with air pollution and too much concrete can shrink in size. Countries have to transform their cities and industries to stop climate change, since it will make droughts, flooding and other events worse every year. Nature might have the solutions to all of these, they just need to be implemented as the green infrastructure and energy grid. urban green spaces, urban bodies of water, constructed wetlands, rain gardens, green roofs, ecological parks are the central sponge bodies. Nature-based solutions are going to be a big part of cities and industrial zones soon. Solar and wind have been powering grid systems connected to cities, lowering energy and city emissions. Heat waves in cities reduce rainfall and natural cooling, then rainstorms devastate these large, concrete, polluted cities comprising gray infrastructure. Many countries had pledged to implement nature-based solutions to their infrastructure to make it greener, cleaner and climate-proof. Green roofs, walls, augmented park space, extra tree planting, green building designs, even vertical farming, incorporating natural water channels, diversity of species to cities are part of nature-based solutions. Restoration and protection of mangroves along coastlines, moderate the impact of waves, wind on coastal settlements and cities and sequester CO2. Nature-based solutions in cities, moderate the impact of high temperatures, capture storm water, abate pollution, act as carbon sinks, simultaneously enhance biodiversity. Citywide solutions can be applied worldwide, so every country can minimize their contribution to climate change. This is a global issue that will cause more catastrophic events every year. Natural solutions in sponge cities can capture and sequester tons of carbon in metropolitan areas right at the source. Societies increasingly face challenges, such as global warming, urbanization, food insecurity, water scarcity, pollution, risk of disaster. The solutions stress the sustainable use of nature in solving coupled environmental, social, economic challenges. Similarly, the concept of ecological engineering refers to protecting, restoring, modifying ecological systems to increase the quality, sustainability of services they provide and to build new ecological systems. Green infrastructure refers to an interconnected network of green spaces that conserves natural systems and provides many benefits to human populations. Some countries restore their forest landscape for food production, water security and to reduce disaster risk. Cities will become natural areas where people live in green buildings and housing made of organic materials, powered by green energy. Eventually, new sources of green energy will be developed and power all industries. Water is basically the main resource for all cities and industries worldwide. It's not being managed properly. As a result of global warming, it will be scarcer, yet nature-based solutions, green energy grids, sponge cities can establish a SolarPunk future that can secure water resources and other productions that rely on them. Solar panels over water canals prevent evaporation, generate clean energy for rural and farming areas. Places where there are large solar farms reflect the heat and receive more rain to nurture crops and vegetation. The areas filled with solar and wind farms will grow greener and more fertile. Some countries have combined solar with farming to yield double the output of energy and food. Vertical farming powered by green energy will be integrated into more buildings inside cities, recycling water in a loop. Buildings will become sponges, collecting and recycling water in a loop. Many of them can include vertical farming and other green productions to make cities greener and more productive. Many productions, cities, buildings will utilize biomimicry to make them more in tune with nature without harming the environment. Green and gray infrastructures work better together. Just one cannot succeed by itself for cities and other areas. For this reason, large cities can get smaller to become more environmentally friendly, incorporating green solutions every year. Cities and productions that supply them will be more organic and biological rather than chemicals. Some architects are designing buildings, houses with biomimicry in mind to include natural airflow, organic materials, and designs that improve the surrounding ecosystems. Cities will evolve as living organisms that recycle water, CO2 and pollutants as a resource for the benefit of people. If you look at most of the green natural areas, they're sponges that recycle everything to benefit all organisms. Some countries have introduced the concept of forest cities. Cities will be modeled after the richest forest around the globe, creating new forests instead of cutting them down to clear land for construction. Concrete jungles, destructive industries, harmful agriculture practices. This is how cities were built in the past. Some native communities were so in tune with nature, their settlements were creating new forests, diverse croplands, enriching the environment they're in. Concrete cities can be renovated after forests and diversity of vegetation. There are new building and city projects that grow as biological sponges that look futuristic, also enhance the properties of nature and their surroundings. Buildings will grow as vertical rainforests including a great diversity of plants, trees and crops inside vertical farms. New vertical farm layouts don't require watering, fertilization, or artificial lighting, which wastes electricity. Vertical farms can be drafted as open terraces on each level to grow any kind of crop in an organic setting, rather than artificial structures like current vertical farming practices. Some countries that have the largest deserts are tormented by droughts and desertification, affecting every aspect of their society. They started greening their deserts with permaculture methods of land regeneration that make degraded, dry lands into fertile cropland and forests. Eventually, the driest areas in large tracts of deserts can become self-sufficient and fertile with permaculture and regreening projects. Dry areas can receive enough rainfall and retain water in the ground with the help of rich vegetation and natural water reservoirs. This is how sponge cities and polyculture land regeneration can attract rainfall, recycle and store it naturally without any flooding or desertification. These new methods prevent both of these disasters in cities and dry areas. Some cities have been overgrowing as concrete deserts, affecting climate and consuming natural resources at an exponential rate. This has to end in all nations. Overgrowth and overconsumption have devastated nature, destabilized climate, and they've been the main causes of all kinds of pollution. Cities and industries can grow by greening the environment, creating new sponges of production and living blocks powered by renewables. Every industry is trying to recycle all they can. Some companies are redesigning all of their products to to be fully recyclable by them in post-production. In this way, they can reuse everything they make over and over again without wasting money on raw materials. Green energy is going to be the framework connecting all nations to each other. Cities will be interwoven with clean energy and organic compounds. Cities and green productions that supply them will create new river systems recycling water, which is the most essential resource without contamination. Natural systems, when they're integrated into cities and industries, can recycle water in a loop. This is how sponge cities fulfill their water needs. They have the natural infrastructure to recycle and reuse water. They continuously improve their city planning with natural landscapes and systems for water storage and reuse. Cities grow greener and more sustainable. They prevent disasters and other events incited by climate change. There are also many areas becoming more degraded and deforested across the world. Some countries have initiated terraforming projects to regenerate and reclaim these areas. Natural disasters and climate change have ruined many ecosystems in regions filled with biodiversity, rich forests and water flow. Since the year 2000, coastal floods, inland droughts have become more frequent worldwide. There are new projects to move floodwaters to the drought-ravaged interior. New irrigation systems copying natural water flow can transfer excess water to dry lands to irrigate and green them. Thus, dry areas can grow greener and attract enough rainfall to sustain and expand. Many cities had to reduce their water usage as a result of prolonged droughts and water scarcity. Water scarcity was only experienced in continents with the driest climates and vast deserts. Now it's being experienced everywhere. Less than 0.5% of all the water in the world is potable and usable for society. Natural systems and vast areas of forests have been filtering and creating the water that can be used and drank by the world population. Due to changing environmental and climate, water shortages will get worse. Flooding will increase because of volatile rainfall patterns. In less than a century, there may not be enough water anywhere in the world, igniting great instability and challenges. In order to prevent this, every nation has to act now. They had to transform every acre of land and city to their greenest, most regenerative form to tackle climate change and all other global issues. On top of that, most of the coastal cities, which are some of the largest, may be underwater while sea and ocean levels are rising. There is a prediction that ocean levels will rise up to 100 feet to swallow entire coasts of every continent. Every nation has to do whatever it takes to stop global warming. Entire ice continents are melting extremely fast. The largest cities may be underwater in a century or so, which isn't a long time. Years go by very quickly. Green energy. Sponge cities will consist of many timber buildings to reduce CO2 emissions from construction. Timber can be sourced sustainably via tree farms grown for this purpose. Some countries are building the tallest timber structures to minimize their environmental impact and emissions. Timber stores carbon inside buildings rather than emitting CO2 into the atmosphere. Constructions have been some of the biggest emitters. Green buildings consist of cross-laminated timber that store tons of carbon, also continue to absorb carbon after their construction with green rooftops, terraces, lush vegetation on their facades, living walls, indoor farming and other green building mechanisms. Replacing the steel and concrete with timber reduces tons of CO2 emissions. Replacing plant-based blocks and building materials can reduce emissions even more. Concrete streets, walls and buildings generate a heat island effect in cities. Using timber and replacing concrete with more sustainable materials can mitigate heat waves inside cities. Timber from sustainably managed forests can be one of the best options for new constructions. More trees are planted and harvested in this practice, widespread across the planet. In a sense, construction will erect new forests vertically and horizontally over cities and towns. Eventually, all buildings, complexes and houses in and out of cities will store tons of carbon and sequester more with new timber forests. Trees are able to absorb carbon dioxide and store it inside their wood. Buildings account about 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions. Timber can reduce this figure. 400% more carbon can be stored in a timber building than a concrete one. Processes for producing concrete and steel are highly unsustainable, do significant harm to the planet. As trees age, they begin to absorb less CO2, produce less oxygen. Harvesting them once they're mature, planting new ones in their place, can be better for the environment in some areas. Sawdust is being used for 3D printing of products looking like wood. During wood and timber processing and shaping, tons of sawdust is produced. This used to go to landfills or burnt down, which causes emissions. Now, new 3D printers can use sawdust and other types of waste as a sustainable resin replacement to produce many products in elegant shapes. A lot of products will be made with 3D printers that use all kinds of waste. Many kinds of waste can be mixed with binders to be 3D printed into new shapes and molds. Cross-laminated timber is made by fixing several lumber boards together in alternating layers using super strong adhesive and compression techniques. Doing this gives it high strength in two directions, making it sturdy and versatile to construct larger and taller buildings without or little concrete and steel. New green buildings can store tons of carbon in their structures and can make the way for carbon-negative, solar sponge cities that mimic nature and lush forests. Some types of trees used for timber can be grown in drier areas to reforest and regreen them, making the world greener and more forested each passing year. For construction, millions of trees have to be planted and grown not far from cities to supply the demand for new and old green city plans. Timber buildings can be more resistant to fire than concrete and steel when they're designed accurately. Timber buildings can be designed for self-extinguishment, which is when flames aren't strong enough to break down the material, the fire dies out due to lack of fuel. Concrete foundations are still needed. There are hybrid buildings consist of timber and steel. Construction can be quicker and quieter. The end result would be better for mental health and well-being. Less pollution is generated with sustainable timber materials. Many eco-villages can be built with green buildings and clean energy systems. They can generate more energy than they need, transfer the rest to the grid. Cities must shrink in size to reach net zero worldwide. There are very large megalopolises that produce a tremendous amount of pollution and waste. They contribute to climate change way more than other areas. New green cities and eco-towns can be planned and built in a short time with sustainable timber that's as strong as concrete. Farming and productions can be incorporated to these new locations planned to tackle climate change with new cities. Construction can sequester more carbon than it produces soon. Many nations are moving their large cities to new regions to start greener, cleaner, more sustainable cities and capitals. Clean energy is going to be in full operation. Mass manufacturing of modules and instruments to generate clean energy is getting better every year. It's getting easier to install energy devices and storage units into cities, housing and buildings. Water is called blue gold in this age. Buildings will harvest rainwater to provide for their plumbing and usage. More and more buildings, complexes and cities will incorporate trees, plants and vegetation. To irrigate them, rainwater can be harvested via various ways to stream it into pipes connecting every balcony, garden and terrace. Regardless of roof material, any building can collect rainwater to feed plants and trees. Living walls and roofs decrease temperatures inside buildings, produce oxygen, can even stabilize the climate, and dense cities consist of many buildings close to each other. Greener cities can condense the humidity in the air to fall as drops of rain, just like what forests do. Forests nourish themselves by condensing moisture in the atmosphere. That's why greener areas receive more rainfall. Cities can do the same by increasing park space and green cover. Algae can be grown inside glass walls, windows, tanks inside buildings, to create biomass used for many things. This is how cities will grow as of now. They will produce their own energy, biomass, food, biomaterials and recycle, reuse everything as much as possible. It's easier to treat the wastewater that's been filtered and recycled by natural systems in and around cities. Algae can be used to create biomass from wastewater, and this can be used as energy, oils, many other things made from biomass. Cities will become green production zones while implementing all kinds of innovative approaches to green growth and organic carbon conversion. Algae can play a great role in making cities more climate friendly. Living walls consist of many types of algae, moss, lichens and other plants. Algae are very versatile. It's been used to make so many things extraordinarily. It can grow faster than all other crops, can be produced as an energy crop. Algae can be used to remove tons of carbon from the atmosphere in desert regions or any other place easily. It creates so much biomass in such a short time that it can be more useful and versatile for many industries. A lot of new SolarPunk cities can be created in desert regions with clean energy and green productions. Renewable energy and production are so powerful to transform deserts into very productive, fertile and renewable biozones in cities. Large tracts of deserts can be redeemed to remove more carbon from the atmosphere than other areas, since most areas where people live are very carbon intensive. Some people who learn how to convert deserts into fertile and productive lands know how to create very renewable, green and self-sustaining establishments in arid lands. Some entrepreneurs want to create very innovative and futuristic cities and towns in the heart of deserts, powered by green energy and sustainable manufacturing, recycling, reusing everything produced and used. This can be the blueprint to create many new cities around dry regions that need natural regeneration and reforestation. When a lot of people live in these new eco-cities, they can work and invest in renewable, sustainable enterprises, also plant millions of trees to create very prolific forests and farms. Introducing biodiversity to dry lands through constructing new eco-cities can revive vast deserts into abundant provinces. SolarPunk future can be initiated anywhere in the world because there are various green energy sources and plant species that can grow very fast anywhere. They can both supply the needs and constructions of new eco-cities built in deserts, near mountains, rivers, lakes, forests or any other type of terrain. There are various species of plants and trees that grow so fast they can be used to make so many things, also for renewable industries and constructions. They require less water, nutrients and fertilizers than all other plants. This is how new eco-cities that grow like forests can be started anywhere, especially in dry regions. To reclaim them, just planting trees won't capture enough carbon from the atmosphere. Direct air capture with fans isn't good enough to remove all the carbon either. The best way might be creating many new eco-cities that can capture carbon naturally, industrially and technologically to feed all industries. If you look at it, a lot of things are made mostly of carbon. This can be scaled up industrially to turn atmospheric carbon into products, materials and foods. In this way, atmospheric carbon and waste will be the greatest resource for all businesses and industries. Only this can make climate change obsolete, which is one of the greatest threats for the future of mankind. A SolarPunk future must be launched globally. This will also make human society more united, cooperative and prevent future disasters. Some of the world's most dense cities have undergone total renovation and retrofitting to become greener and supply their energy from renewables. This means a zero carbon and zero waste economy can be accomplished anywhere, even in most dense cities. Entrepreneurs are formulating edible garden cities in urban, suburban and rural areas. Edible gardens can be placed anywhere, in backyards of homes, hotels, restaurants, on top of malls, schools, grocery stores, in underutilized land around cities. Lush landscaping for urban spaces and high-rises is being introduced to many cities. It requires developers to incorporate greenery into their plans via rooftop farming, gardens, co-located solar panels and greenery, green walls, pavilions, plantar boxes, landscape decks, etc. Buildings and cities will remove tons of carbon when they incorporate more greenery, vertical farming and garden space in their structures. Some urban farming companies use hydraulic power to rotate and irrigate crop in modular vertical frames. The racks are stacked up to 9 meters, housed in outdoor greenhouses. Hydroponic vertical farming racks can be placed on top of buildings. Urban farms can also cool down cities with rooftop green spaces. Solar panels on top, on the walls, window solar can supply most of the energy needs of these buildings. Urban farming will be attempted inside, on top of a lot of buildings and empty space, to make cities greener and more in tune with nature. Buildings and facilities can generate more energy than they need via renewables and algae biofuels, also produce tons of renewable resources via urban farming and plant-based materials. Some companies are planning to build totally edible garden skyscrapers since food and fuel prices are skyrocketing. These buildings will grow as SolarPunk sponges. This would attract so many people to these new developments and create so many green jobs for the city population. Green manufacturing can be done with the plant feedstock produced inside these garden skyscrapers. Recycled glass waste can be used in 3D printed concrete to make construction more eco-friendly. Global sand shortages and ecological crisis. Glass waste can replace sand in the concrete mixture. Sand is the world's second most used resource after water. It's a key ingredient in cement, asphalt, and glass. It makes up around 75% of concrete mixture. Global demand for sand has tripled in the past 20 years. It's still growing. The ever-growing demand is causing a shortage and environmental damage. Desert sand is too fine to be used in construction. Instead, sand is extracted from riverbeds, coastlines, the seabed, damaging and polluting ecosystems, increasing the risk of floods and droughts. Glass waste could be the replacement for sand. Glass is made of silica, which is a major component of sand. It's endlessly recyclable. Glass has been used in 3D printed concrete and worked well. Construction can be circular and sustainable if it uses all kinds of waste. Cities have been contributing to climate change, global pollution levels, and unwittingly degrading the planet's ecosystems. From now on, existence in all the new cities can be very regenerative for the planet and the environment they're placed on. There is no need to cut down forests, emit tons of greenhouse gases, pollute the waterways to build cities and industries anymore. Some native communities had very livable, very ecologically balanced settlements in the past. Growing too big, too tall, economically and as a city will never be sustainable. After some time, the entire planet will be uninhabitable. Some places and even large cities around the world are almost uninhabitable as a result of all of these mistakes. Buildings and cities can grow and produce anything without large factories and manufacturers transporting all the goods. There are so many plants, trees, even microorganisms and bacteria that can grow in tanks to produce everything. Processing and manufacturing can be carbon neutral or negative inside green manufacturing buildings that process the yields. Cities can be more productive in industrial and agricultural zones. Vertical farms were proven to give higher yields than other methods. Every country has to design and construct so many green buildings to make their cities more climate positive and carbon negative. There won't be a need for large power plants and nuclear power plants to generate energy one day. Every building, house and business will generate more energy than they need from a variety of clean sources, as well as by capturing carbon from the air to produce carbon negative fuels. This way, more carbon can be removed from the air than given off during production, synthesis and usage. Carbon capture and storage with bioenergy can be incorporated in many buildings and facilities. It's an easy process that can be done with algae, other water crops, and various microorganisms. Collected rainwater by green buildings can be split into hydrogen and oxygen. This is green hydrogen, which is carbon-free that can be used as an energy source for cities and vertical productions. Without transforming every city and industrial zone in the world into their greenest and most renewable phase, the goal to reach 1.5 degrees Celsius will be impossible. Eventually, greener cities powered by green energy can terraform their surroundings and expand organically by removing tons of carbon from the atmosphere. This is the future that's needed to put an end to climate change and coming cataclysmic events. There are predictions that warn of many cataclysms, and most of them are caused by humanity's misuse and overuse of natural resources and the environment. A SolarPunk civilization consists of many green cities and vertical sponge buildings may have the chance to resolve all the current and potential problems. The greenhouse gases can be removed by converting every industry into a green production system to supply the globe. SolarPunk can be both low-tech and high-tech. Innovation is endless. Many new inventions and solutions will be introduced to deal with coming changes. The worlds of SolarPunk envision technologies applied in appropriate situations in order to foster harmony between people and their environment. Passive housing, passive cooling, communal living, solar panels, soil work are all required to establish a SolarPunk future. The solutions strengthen the relationship between communities and the surrounding land, as well as lessen the work needed to live a comfortable life. Earthships can be designed as tall buildings to be placed inside urban areas. They include passive heating and cooling, using recycled and local materials, recycling water, integrated greenhouse gardens. Recycled materials like tires, supported by steel and timber, can be used to construct tall green buildings. Some artists have been rendering very futuristic and harmonious SolarPunk worlds and cities. Soon, architects, engineers, scientists, designers will formulate buildings, cities, manufacturing systems, new methods of productivity after the concept of SolarPunk. The profit-centered global economy we've built has driven us to create technologies that function to expand margins and make more money for capitalism. This has to change. Everything has to be reevaluated to adapt to the needs of the environment, the atmosphere, climate, natural resources and all other aspects of planet Earth. SolarPunk demands a future built not on profit, but instead on community and a strong relationship with the natural world. Instead of focusing on technologies that make the most profit, SolarPunk urges the world to seek new ideas, tools that deepen the relationship to the global environment and its well-being. Many garden cities interwoven to each other in so many ways will form garden states, then cover up entire continents in sustainable growth. Buildings can grow as vertical forests as of now. There is the infrastructure to accomplish this. Cities can be prolific sponges to adapt to climate and provide everything for people and other living beings. Extreme technological and industrial growth will never be sustainable. You can see the consequences of this now. The aliens have depleted or corrupted their planets as a result of technological growth. Technology shouldn't be the main purpose in life. Industrial growth has created climate crises. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the near future. Some people predict very cataclysmic events nearing. Humans have to unite for a higher purpose of planetary protection and regeneration. This is a change in every facet of civilization regarding cities, industries, businesses, productions, consumption and all other sectors affecting the environment and climate. Natural and technological solutions to climate change and environmental challenges will revolutionize every nation to attain their most regenerative and cooperative state. The world has to stop being conflicted and has to cooperate to deal with the real threats concerning every living being. Buildings are going to be vertical or extensive agroforestry structures that can produce everything that the city population needs to live sustainably, without harming the environment. Builders, designers, developers, policymakers, researchers, manufacturers can address the serious impact of buildings on climate and work toward real zero carbon buildings, complexes, towns and cities. Embodied carbon is very significant for climate goals. Embodied carbon is the total of emissions from the making, maintaining, materials embodied in buildings or products, as distinct from operating energy and carbon emissions. There is a great carbon storage potential inside buildings and materials. Just like how trees grow and embody carbon increasingly during their lifetime, buildings can include and embody tons of carbon via many systems. Material carbon emissions are a subset of embodied carbon. The product stage including raw material supply, transport to factory, manufacturing. Industries can drive down their carbon footprint with natural products. Wood and timber have the lowest carbon footprint of any structural material because planted timber trees hold carbon in their trunks, roots and branches. New timber forests must be planted in empty areas to supply the demand from construction. Paper and construction industry have been cutting down large old growth forests to make paper products and construction materials. By planting various tree species in unoccupied areas without forests, it can grow new timber and paper forests. Thus, forests can be fully protected from any destructive industry. Some of the largest forests are still being burned down or cut down. This must end to reach climate goals and preserve ecological stability. Plant-based materials and building blocks prevent cutting down forests completely. Constructing of many new green cities powered by clean energy has the chance to grow many new forests in and out of their periphery. There are many plant species that can be grown to build new cities just with plants and trees harvested from sustainably managed plantations. Battery systems will be integrated into every city, town and building soon. Lithium-based batteries may be obsolete when batteries made of more abundant minerals like iron, oxygen and super materials like graphene. Iron air batteries are better for grid storage, and they can even be included inside buildings to store extra energy generated from renewables. Iron is abundant in Earth's crust. It can replace lithium for large-scale storage systems. Iron air battery basically involves the interaction of iron with atmospheric oxygen. It's comprised of a large number of cells which are connected together to form giant batteries. One day, plant-based materials like hemp can replace lithium and other scarce minerals in manufacturing of batteries. Hemp batteries are proven to work well. Their manufacturing can be scaled up. When iron pellets are exposed to air, a rapid oxidation reduction takes place, converting iron to rust or iron oxide, liberating energy. The energy is liberated in the form of electrons, which travel through grid circuits and supply electrical energy. The battery can be charged by reversing the reaction, in which electrons eat oxygen and reduce the rust layer back to iron. As the iron rusts again, it generates current. Iron air batteries can be scaled up to store energy from weather-dependent renewable energies like wind and solar. Some metal air batteries can be better than lithium-ion for grid and city transmission. Some companies started manufacturing compact and modular nuclear reactors to power anything like new installations, rural complexes, aircraft and even spacecraft. Eventually, fusion may be in full operation, and it can be designed as very compact and modular reactors to power any type of craft, building and city with free-flowing energy. Helium-3 is abundant on the moon and in Earth's atmosphere as a result of greenhouse gases. It can be used to generate so much energy through different reactions. Helium-3 can be one of the newest energy sources to power the green infrastructure and space colonies. Compact reactors are easier and cheaper to manufacture than expensive and large reactors. They can get transported anywhere and can be installed into facilities and machinery. New reactor designs also make use of nuclear waste. Nuclear waste is radioactive, and this can be used to generate energy with new reactor types. Waste to energy is being implemented in many countries. Nuclear waste can be a sustainable energy source. Compact reactors can make use of it after it's discarded from large reactors. Just solar, wind and batteries cannot make the energy grid completely renewable. Nuclear can supplement it to make grid systems cleaner. Energy grid will connect to each other worldwide to transmit excess energy from many regions. Solar panels can float on water or installed over canals to prevent water evaporation for panel cooling. Solar is the most abundant energy source that can revolutionize cities and businesses. A lot of companies, cities and housing complexes are installing solar panels over the roof. Farming is being merged with solar farms for double yields of energy and feedstock. Agricultural, industrial and municipal deployment of solar are all feasible. Flexible solar films can cover up the roofs and walls of every building and house one day. They can reduce heat island effect, also generate more than enough energy to power cities. Some companies are covering their entire roofs and facades of their facilities with solar films. Businesses are harvesting double yields from these new energy technologies. The excess energy can be given back to the grid for extra income. Car batteries are able to do this in some countries. Solar nanotechnology is going to be mainstream one day. Every surface will have the capability to generate energy from ambient lighting and sunlight. Ambient lighting is adequate to generate some energy for personal devices. Some new tech gadgets are able to harvest this with integrated modules. Solar nanocells can be printed on plastics, paper, and other substrates. Solar panels over water canals, channels and irrigation systems are very effective in farming in rural areas. They prevent evaporation of water resources over large channels. This is very necessary in hot regions where farming is dominant. When solar energy is combined with agroforestry and polyculture, it can restore abundance and vegetation in dry and drought-ridden areas in need of help. These communities can work in projects that tackle climate change, desertification and land degradation with renewable energy, innovative and regenerative farming systems. Transparent solar cells can be incorporated into glass windows, plastics, roofs and all other components for buildings. They can generate more energy than traditional solar panels because they can cover up large surfaces, every window. Transparent solar cells don't absorb visible light, they absorb other available wavelengths like infrared light. They can reach the efficiency of 2/3 of silicon cells. Solar nanotechnologies can give rise to the SolarPunk future, making every device, building and surface an energy generator. Cities will be remodeled and grow as new forests, instead polluting, consuming and altering the environment and its resources. Natural resources can be produced inside large integrated structures forming cities. Nuclear fusion and compact nuclear reactors can make these happen sooner than other energy sources. Transportation systems and every type of craft can be powered by compact reactors instead of fuel-guzzling engines. This will greatly improve the efficiency, speed and travel time of transportation. Modular and compact nuclear will revolutionize the transportation and energy sectors. Helium-3 can be harvested from the Earth's atmosphere and regolith of the moon to power nuclear reactors for space colonization and to power Earth civilization, as well as other colonies in space. Sunlight can be vacuumed with advanced mirroring technologies to generate so much energy inside reactors. Waste heat can be harvested with new thermoelectrical devices anywhere and inside any heat source and engine. This way, waste heat can be the newest energy source. It's very abundant. There is a tremendous amount of heat emanating from every engine, power plant, reactor, building, city, road and so forth. This can be harvested as energy with thermoelectric devices when they're attached to them. Thermoelectrical conversion of waste heat can generate so much energy to recharge all kinds of battery systems. For example, there is still so much heat being radiated from electric motors. This can be collected with thermal devices attached to motors and other parts of electric cars and machinery using electric motors. In this way, the batteries inside these vehicles are being continuously charged with an abundant source of energy, which is radiated heat. This process can be scaled up globally. Thermoelectric devices are being developed by several companies. Heat is one of the greatest sources of energy, just like solar. It can supplement renewable energies and get stored inside battery systems attached to cars, other transports, solar panels, city architecture, manufacturing plants, production facilities and all other things that emanate heat. Tropical forests are one of the world's most important carbon sinks, absorbing over 1/5 of emissions every year. Without them, the world would already be 1 degree Celsius hotter. Climate change can't be solved without tropical and even temperate forests. 1/6 of the Amazon has been lost already. Scientists warn of a tipping point that the entire forest can be destroyed. Forests in Malaysia, Indonesia, forests in Central Africa are in danger as well. Deforestation means carbon pollution. Tropical deforestation worldwide accounts for almost as many emissions as all the world's cars and trucks combined. Losing tropical forests means losing hope and limiting the rise in global temperatures to 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius. The heart of the problem is economic. As long as it's profitable to cut down forests for timber or clear them for agriculture, they will continue to be ruined. The world needs a better economic model to preserve all forests. Forests should be worth more alive than dead. This can drive investment into forest protection while producing the goods and services. Agriculture has to change to support forests and enrich them. Illegal activity, deforestation, forest fires, excessive logging are supposed to be prevented around forests. When more sustainable production methods are switched with destructive farming, they can complement forests and boost biodiversity. An updated, more durable and larger source of forest finance is necessary to put an end to forest destruction around the globe. Forests are actually worth way more alive than dead. New investments, projects, financing, agroforestry can be channeled into sustainable green growth that protects large and small forests. A new development and production model can make Brazil, Indonesia and other forest nations the world's first green superpowers. Of course, overconsumption and population growth around forests must be prohibited beforehand. Nations must regenerate their natural resources by protecting them and enriching them, rather than destroying, wasting and squandering them. Lowering of emissions can be accelerated by forest finance. New investments from all over the world can finance millions of tons of emission reductions related to forests, with the prospect of many more millions. This will build new buffers against risks like forest fires. It will require every country, forest nations to increase their forest protection and recovery over time. A reliable and robust market for forest carbon can be created when transactions can occur to restore, regrow, protect forest resources. Companies need to get involved in climate action by protecting forests and planting new ones for green productions. Companies can reduce their emissions in their operations and supply chains by switching to green growth and regenerative resources. In supply chains, companies can solve climate change outside their own operations by protecting tropical forests and all other forest ecosystems. To solve climate change, deep reductions in fossil fuel emissions and forest emissions must be achieved. Tropical deforestation must be prevented before it's too late. The world is at a tipping point at this time. Some of the largest carbon sinks, which are tropical forests, are required to be completely protected and restored. Full value of alive forests can be reflected by making them worth more alive and prolific than wiped out.